And we are recording now. All right, so today, for the next couple hours, we're going to talk about the types of networks and network topology. So first part of the class is going to be types of computer networks. We are not setting up, this is not a class about setting up networks as far as the um, logistics of who's connected to what with software wise, but we are setting up networks hardware wise. Even though we're not setting up from the IT point of view, um, if you're interested in that, I encourage you to investigate the IT classes that Venture College also is offering here. And those guys are pretty good as well. But even though we are not setting up as far as software, we should know what types of networks we're dealing with because that also is kind of tied with the hardware part, okay, which is mostly the wiring, creating links that we're creating, practicing creating links, just short cables, but in the class, in our labs. However, in the real world, those links would be much longer. They would be, let's say, from the rack location right to the destination. It will be like uh, 200 feet, 250 feet, 100 feet, and they, instead of making one, you will be making maybe 80 of those or 600 of those. Okay, and so it takes time. How is the pay in the network field compared to electrician? Um, I would say it is very comparable, depending on what you do. If you like, I think the way it stands now, if you get yourself hired with the communications company as a technician, then if you're on books, you might get paid in the range of, let's say, maybe $25 an hour, something like that. Okay. But you're on books, you're part of the team, and you're guaranteed 40 hours per week. You're hired as a worker for that company. If you're doing this thing on your own, which if you had nothing to do with that before, watch those videos that I posted. There's a couple of videos of what is involved in communications, or telecommunications, or the uh, data communications world. Then you're going to have a more clear idea of what is involved as far as the type of job that you'll be doing. As far as pay, um, I suggest that you don't start right away because you need to gain some experience, and gaining experience is about working at least a year or two for a company hired on books. Then, from that point, when you get enough experience, and if you have that drive in you, that you want to start something on your own, then you might hire yourself as a subcontractor to bigger companies. And in that case, you might be making somewhere around $45 an hour, depending on what you negotiate. Sometimes you can negotiate $45 an hour, sometimes $55 an hour. So anywhere from 45 to 55 realistic to negotiate. Okay, or if you get, so that's a subcontractor. So basically, the bigger company gets the contracts, and they are in a relationship with you, and they keep calling and they feeding you the jobs. So that's called subcontracting. Now you can also pick up jobs of your own independently, and then for that one you might charge anywhere from, I would say, anywhere from $60 to $100 an hour. Okay, depending on what the contract is, and depending on your negotiation skills. If okay, the programming course at Fansha is fun but very tough. Yes, well, you gotta spend. Um, well, you want to get paid. Why do we get paid for what we do? Is because somebody else cannot do it, and it's not easy to learn. Sometimes it is. You gotta have some challenges, but that's why you get later on. That's why you get paid. The network field. The network field. can I get the electrician's license? Well, licensing, well, it depends where, okay? As far as being electrician, you do need licensing, no matter where you are, pretty much in the world. Now, when it comes to licensing for IT or infrastructure or data cabling, okay? In some areas, you don't need a license. If you know how to do your job, and then you can do the job. All right. So in Ontario, we don't need a license. Now, in Western provinces like Alberta, Saskatchewan, towards the west, then the IT business is considered as a trade, and you do need some licensing for that. So if you're planning to move towards the Western provinces, then you might want to investigate that aspect of the business. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Good. All right. So let's if you have any questions, just shoot through the chat line, and I'll be peeking through the chat lines, and if something else comes up to your mind later, just by all means send me an email. Okay? All right. Let's get to the networks here. Okay, computer network introduction. All right. So these are the network types. Definition, what is a computer network? Computer network is a group of computer systems and other computing hardware devices that are linked together through communication channels to facilitate communication and resource sharing among wide range of users. Networks are commonly categorized based on their characteristics, and we got network types. Now, this lecture here is it's my common lecture, and with maybe some slight modifications, I present this thing to the network cabling class here, and structured cabling, and there's another course, structured systems or something like that. There's 3 types of courses, so this is a common. All 3 classes have to know that. So. So you might see another version of this somewhere on YouTube as well. Okay, but we need to know the basics. All right. All right. Now, network types. We're going to uh, take a look at something that's called a LAN, which is for local area network. We're going to look at WAN, W-A-N, which stands for wide area network. WLAN, which stands for Wireless Local Area Network, MAN, Metropolitan Network, and storage or system or server, they kind of interweave as far as purpose of that. So SAN sometimes can stand for storage or system or server. Okay, and we're going to look at VPN, Virtual Private Network. Which is widely used these days, and I'll show you, and I'll show you the idea of what's involved. Okay, so now this is a little picture of a Cisco gateway. Now let's analyze some of those lights. Here's an OK light. That means that everything is okay. Don't worry, everything is okay. All right, that means something has the gateway has booted up. Now, you could see that there's a WAN links established, and so WAN, that means this thing is on internet. This device has found internet because it is on a WAN. The light has lit up. Okay. Now, VPN, now here's it has 4 ports here for LAN. So that means there are 2 ports are plugged in and there is communication happening on those 2 ports. And there's a little light here that says VPN. That is a very, very important light. And we're going to, in the next few slides, we're going to see the importance of that light that is not supposed to be blinking. Okay, it's now different equipment have this thing arranged. The lights or indicators have arranged maybe in different ways, but that's basically the basics of it. Basically the basics. Okay. All right. LAN. So let's take a look at the LAN. What's our local area network? Local area network connects a group of computers in close proximity within the same facility, a building or a group of buildings, for example. Okay. The purpose of that is to share resources and services such as files, printers, applications, email, or internet access. Basically, it's a network that is assigned to a certain type of operations, such as business, right? School, college, university. They all have LANs. Right now, it is impossible to have a commercial institution without a computer network, right? With hundreds of thousands of wires running in. So the jobs are there, especially in some GTA like Metropolitan area, but pretty much everywhere. You see an office building, you see anything that is commercial or residential, it will have it will need to have LAN or computer network to function, such as just as it needs electricity, it needs plumbing, it needs a computer network. So yeah, the jobs are there. Okay. So the purpose, we got the purpose of that. Now let's see here. That is an example of a LAN. So here's in this picture, this is showing something that's called wiring closet. Sometimes it's called communications room. Sometimes it's called LAN room, right? LAN room, or it might be referred to as where is your riser? Okay, where show me where your riser is. Tell me, take me to the riser room or riser. What the idea of a riser is, basically in some buildings, you have a room, a communications room, and a floor above will have another whatever it has arrangements as far as the rooms and whatnot. But the communication room is going to be right above it, and then there will be a floor above, and there's going to be so risers are set up so the communications can be provided to all floors in a much more efficient way. Is it always stored in its own room? The question is it always stored in its own room? Mm, for the purpose of efficiency and organization and logistics, most of the business high rises or commercial buildings, yes, it will have it will have its own room. Sometimes the room is going to be small, like a closet size. Sometimes you're going to have a room size of a classroom. It depends on what type of facility it is. But yeah, there's a bunch of servers, switches, power supplies and whatnot. And those fans, they make noise. Um, they need to be closed. It's impossible to sit there and do work because the noise level is just too much. Okay, so yes, they will have their own rooms. Now, in some smaller businesses, smaller facilities like let's say Tim Hortons or McDonald's or Burger King or local car shop, mechanics shop, they would have a corner somewhere. There's always going to be some communications corner with the big plywood somewhere, and there will be all the telephone lines or the fiber optic lines put in there to that point. It's called demarcation. It's a demarc point, a demarcation point of entry. Actually, demarcation point is coming from outside, but quite often when the wires are run from outside, so that's the demarcation point. Often the demarcation point is referred to as the area inside, and it could be a corner somewhere. And sometimes things are nice and clean, and sometimes you're going to find equipment that is in an open space somewhere in the corner. Everything is screwed onto the plywood board. And if the type of business is like, for example, car shop or anything that there is sawdust involved and all kinds of debris that flies in the air, it's going to have dust on it. It's going to have some residue of some oil thing. So some of them are going to be nice and clean, and some of them are going to be not so clean. Of course, the life expectancy of not having a separate clean room, the life expectancy of the equipment is going to be compromised. Okay, no problem. Excuse me. Let me just Get that. Okay, keep going. So this is just an example. So here's the, and then you can see all the wires home run to the destination. Okay, so here's a home run location, and here is a destination location. So the wires, see the links that we're creating in the lab, straight links, they go from the patch panel, where basically it's a bunch of jacks stuck together beside each other and enclosed in some sort of frame, so we don't have to scatter all the jacks. So the jacks are organized physically. Okay, now the destination point is just a single jack, or maybe there'll be multiple wires going to a wall location or a desktop location, and from there we're going to have patch cords running to um, whatever the equipment is. It could be a desktop computer, it could be a wireless access point in the ceiling, it could be any kind of intelligent device that uses LAN Ethernet type of communication. Okay? It could be a cash register in a store. Now, on the other side, the wires are connected to the patch panels, and they are connected with the patch cords to whatever the equipment they need to be connected to. Okay. Now let's see what next press of the button is going to bring us. Okay, one network can consist of multiple LANs working together. For example, accounting, production plant, and so what is this? It's okay. So there could be one huge network that basically covers the whole plant, the whole facility, the whole business. But in bigger businesses, you would have sub LANs. That, for example, accounting, they would have their own kind of a sub LAN set up, so the data would fly between the computers that are associated with the accounting department. The production plant would have some other devices connected, maybe some shipping and receiving, or whatever else. So the LAN could be in the smaller facilities, it could be just one LAN covering the whole thing. Or if it's a bigger facility, there could be one main distribution frame that is connected to multiple intermediate frames. Okay, intermediate distribution frames. So MDF, here's the terminology here. MDF stands for main distribution frame, or IDF. The F stands for intermediate distribution frame, and it works like this. There could be one main communication room somewhere in, let's say, Home Depot or large department stores, and from there you would have a bunch of, so here there would be the MDF. It's a very common terminology when you go work in the field, and there would be different IDFs. So it would be IDF A, IDF B, could be IDF C, and from there you would have fiber optic link connecting to the main distribution frame, to all the IDFs. So this would be let's say usually it will be fiber optic links connecting those. And over here you would have a lot of patch panels, a lot of switches here. Okay, and over here you will have also you would have patch panels and switches, patch panels and switches, patch panels and switches, and from there the wires would run to the destinations. So be a computer, maybe a bunch of cash registers, okay? Maybe some telephone, VoIP telephones, okay? Anything that uses, so that's the idea of having main distribution frame and intermediate distribution frames. Why do we do that? It's because of the distance limitation. Now, fiber optics have more bandwidth, have more throughput. You can put more data through the fiber optics. So that's why it is sometimes it's just enough to have a link that is consisting of the transmission line and the receiving line to the MDF. And that is going to serve all the computers that are connected to the IDFs. And from the IDFs, you would have copper wires, the ones that we just connected, the Ethernet cables, Cat5e, Cat6, Cat6a, or Cat7. And there would be one Cat7, you might as well use fiber, in my opinion. However, it's different scenarios call for different solutions. And we have a train, okay? All right, so why do we have that? Instead of everything running to the main distribution frame is the distance, okay? So fiber optics can carry more data over longer distances, okay? 1,000 meters, 2,000 meters, 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers. Multimode can handle up to about 3-4 kilometers, depending on the manufacturer and the equipment and the source that you will get. You will not get a consistency as far as the you'll have to look at the specifications. It depends on the equipment that's being used and the type of fiber optic cable. Now, when it comes to Ethernet cable, the maximum distance is, I remember when we're doing, whoever did the labs already, when we did the testing, the tester was also testing for length. And if the cable was too long, it would fail on the length test. So 300 feet is the maximum distance between the end to end of the link. Now it's actually 328. However, you never want to max it out, because if you have 328 feet from patch panel to the jack, then you're going to use patch cord, and the patch cord, wherever it goes, you're going to add the length. And if the copper cable is too long, then the data would get lost in the cable. All right. Now, they have a question here. How would it work if township with multiple buildings? Yeah, so we're going to get to it. So it will be a different type of network. Let's keep going with this. Before we do that, I'm just going to erase this thing so it is not going to get in our way of you seeing me. All right, yeah. Nice and dry. Okay. Now you see me, and now you see me. Clear. Why doesn't everyone run fiber optic cable? Too expensive? Question mark. Yes, that's right. Now, as time goes along, the technology goes forward. Some facilities will employ fiber optics instead of copper. For example, if you go to Home Depot, that would be the scenario that I gave you. It would be example that, for example, Home Depot uses, okay, the stores. Now, when you go to Lowe's, then they all use fiber optic cables. They decided to, instead of running the copper, they would run fiber optic cables everywhere. It's just how somebody decides and how much money. It is still more expensive to run fiber optics than copper. Copper is very popular when it comes to. So it goes not only for the cabling, because the cable, data cable, copper Cat5e or Cat minimum. Nobody installs Cat5 anymore. Cat5e is the minimum. But more and more often, 2021 is this right now, more and more often you're going to see Cat6 being used as minimum, and that later on we're going to analyze the specifications of Cat6. So yes, it is less expensive as far as cabling. The peripherals, the jacks end to end, are less expensive. You can get pretty good jack for maybe, let's say, $5 to $7. If you want to go economical, you can get a data jack, Cat5e jack, for maybe $2, $1.50 sometimes, depending who sells it to you and how you're actually going to use it. Okay. Now, when it comes to connector for fiber optic, some of them are just $20 each. So here's the money, not just the cables, plus the fiber optic line is more expensive than the Cat5e, but the peripherals and the equipment that things are connected to is more expensive. So yes, it's the money. Okay. All right. I will explain. Local area network connects a group of computers in close proximity within the same facility. So we had that already, a building or a group of buildings. Now, I just went on Google Maps and copied something from the satellite view. Now, these are some buildings somewhere. I don't even know what they are, and I don't even know if they're associated with each other. But for the purpose of the lecture, we're going to say, yeah, there's a company that occupies these two buildings, for example. Okay. Now, what happens here? So here, okay, nice, all right. Now, here's a link. See that red line here? Okay. That red line connects, let's say, for example, this is a fiber optic. I'm just showing you how things could be connected as well, as far as build group of buildings. So there would be a communication room somewhere here in this building, or it could be somewhere here because the fiber optic can run further. And but let's say the communication room is somewhere here, and in the other building, the communication room is somewhere here. So let's say the whole communication comes to this building. So this would be the MDF, which is the main distribution frame. And over here, you would have a secondary frame or intermediate distribution frame that would connect all the computers that are in this building. How do we link that? We can link this to fiber optics, fiber optic line, or we can go through a wireless link. Okay. Now, I just want you to get familiar with another technical lingo, if you will. It would be something that's called a media converter. Media converter. Some people spell it with the O, convertor, but usually it's a spelling media converter. Now, media converter is a device that translates one type of a signal to another type of a signal. For example, you have a equipment that is utilizing electronic pulses, electronic signals, which would be going through the copper wiring. Now, when you have fiber optic line, it's not electricity is not involved anymore as far as transmitting the signal. Yes, the electricity is involved on making it happen, but what's happening in the cable, the electricity is not sent through that fiber optic link. Light is sent there. So the electronic signals have to be translated into light signals. And once it gets to the destinations, when all the other computers are using a copper wire, there also the signal has to be translated from the light signals into the electronic signals. Okay, so that's the purpose of a media converter, to translate one type of a signal to another. Now, there is no one type of media converter, because you could have a media converter converting the copper wiring or the copper infrastructure. Copper, I call it by using copper wires instead of fiber optic links. So that's also you're going to hear copper to fiber. Okay, so let's just stay with that for now. So you would have media converter that would convert copper to fiber if that's what you want. If this is the link that you have here. Okay, now if you have a wireless link, you're going to need another type of media converter that converts the copper into air. Okay, electromagnetic waves. Also, media converters are used into, let's say, if you go to Tim Hortons, McDonald's, Burger King, or any, I don't want to, advertise anybody, but all the fast foods restaurants, they don't need to advertise. Any of the fast food places, at the back of at the back wall where the cash registers are, the countertop, you're going to see something that are called menu boards, which are a bunch of monitors stuck together, and the advertising and prices are being displayed there. These are called the menu boards. Those menu boards utilize pretty much Cat5e, some of them fiber, but most it goes on Cat5e. And the signal from the server is delivered through Cat5e cable, and for the purpose of being displayed on the menu board, and some of them are synchronized. So if there's a ping pong ball that just starts from here, or somebody throws a tennis ball, it goes from one monitor to the other. It just looks like a continuous kind of a run. So they will be synchronized. And those at the back of the menu boards, there would be something that's called media players. And media player is also a media converter. Same thing. And they translate that type of a signal into the signal that is going to be displayed. Now, in the earlier years, few years back, a lot of those menu boards would utilize media players that would be externally attached to the back of the menu board or the monitor. Now, most of them have are being produced specifically for the type of business, and the media player is kind of built in. So you actually would have RJ45 data jack, so you can plug in the Cat5e. So that's why we're spending so much time on the knowledge of how to terminate basically Ethernet links. Okay, why does okay, is there a speed difference between Cat5e and fiber? Yes, there is a speed difference, and we're going to cover that in a couple lectures down the road when we do the category cabling. Okay, yes, we're going to have speed differences between Cat5e, Cat6, because the speed is it's called bandwidth. Okay, and we're going to compare that also to coaxial cables, and we're going to compare this to um, mm, fiber optics. Okay, so fiber optic link, one link, transmit and receive, can service the whole IDF, which is intermediate distribution frame, which could be servicing 40 computers. All right. Now, you would not be able to do this with one Cat5e. Yes, maybe you could do it, but it will be slow. All right. So yes, we will cover that. Yes, there's a difference, big difference. All right. So here goes the idea of um, connecting different buildings within the same LAN. Okay. Now, LAN cable structure, as I was saying to you a few minutes back, some of the networks are okay. Let me read what I wrote here. Not all networks are up to the highest standards. Some service codes look like this. Yeah, so you were going to see some kind of a shelf on the plywood, and that I think I took a picture when I was servicing some of the chain of mechanic shops. We were adding something that's called music on hold, and so we had to get into the server room or server area or server corner. You're going to see the basic elements. They're just going to have different form. Like for example, here you see a bunch of jacks. They do serve as a patch panel. Okay, so somebody just wanted to go economical, and there's not too many computers in that facility because they are changing people's brakes or tires. So the people are busy doing their work, and maybe there will be 5 or 6 computers in the whole building there. So somebody didn't want to spend money on a patch panel. They just got the money on they just spend the money on a couple of 1, 2, 3, 4 quadruple jacks with the faceplates. I'm not sure even if they are saving money on that or not, but they decided to go that way. So here's the patch panel area. So on the back of these jacks, the wires go to the computers or whatever else. It could be a Wi-Fi access point, wireless access point. Um, so the destination peripherals, and from here you use the patch cords or patch cables. You can see they're just tucked in behind that electrical pipe that's there, and they're patched into the switch. Okay, and from here you have probably the modem and a gateway for different purposes. So there's other peripheral equipment there. Okay. And sometimes different companies would be taking care of different type of equipment. Like for example, there would be a company that provides or takes care of the whole network, and they would give you the modem and the switch. Now there will be another company that provides some other services, like for example, music on hold. Music on hold is when somebody puts you on hold on your phone, then you hear the music. Now, somebody got a bright idea of starting something that's called Music on Hold Company. Then that they would just for the money, of course. So bigger chains would get them the content of what they want to advertise, and they would produce the audio content. Did you know that this month we have special on these brakes or those tires or those toothbrushes? And whatever else, blah blah blah, and this thing would be looped, so it'd be playing all over instead of playing radio while you're being on hold. Okay, and here's the wonderful music as the phone ring. Let's wait. Okay, there we go. So another company would be sending you or this to install, and you would just plug it into to the switch. And over here would be another on the other side. It would be like an audio jack that you would connect it to a telephone system. Um, and then that's how the music on hold would work. This is just on one example. There could be another company that is servicing Wi-Fi. So this main network company would just service just the regular cash registers and the management. Now there will be another company that is hired to service the Wi-Fi in the whole Toys R Us store or somewhere else. They would send you the box. All right, wireless access point. Now that's some wireless access point. That's the abbreviation WAP. WAP. Okay. Yeah. um, so when it comes to installing those, you can just order a couple of WAPs, or you can just that terminology is being used. This the technical lingo in the business, or sometimes they call APs, access points. They skip the W. They say AP WAP. It's the same thing. It's a wireless access point. So some of the service codes will look like this, but you will see the same elements as if, for example, you would have something like this. Okay, over here you have the same elements. All right, you just kind of arranged in a little bit different way. You have the wiring trace above, and you, for example, here you can see a bunch of fiber optic lines here. This is the protective sleeve or flex pipe for to protect the fiber optics, because they are susceptible to physical damage. They're fragile, more fragile than copper. Now you have a bunch of patch panels and bunch of switches arranged in a different way. Okay, so now that's a huge facility. Um, I think it's a Google Center in Oklahoma or something. I got this thing from the internet. You're going to have the link, reference link, when you download the mm, lecture notes. Yeah. Now, I just said here now, as a side note, consider the power that's required to service the equipment. That takes a tremendous amount of power. Look, you can see some transformers there. Right? That's a lot of power that goes through that. All right. Now, all those, excuse me, did I scare you? All that equipment produces heat. Okay, so like for example, that one section, just one vertical section here, sometimes it's capable of producing enough heat as if you had two barbecues running full blast. So you see how many barbecues are running. So the power that is needed to service um, the server rooms, it needs to power the equipment, but it also requires the power is required to cool it down, because not only you have to supply the power to the equipment, but you have to supply the power to the air conditioning units that are cooling the whole thing down. If the air condition fails, uh, then the equipment is not going to run for long, because it's going to overheat and it's just going to stop working. Now, quite often the equipment that is the servers or the switches or the or the routers or whatnot, they are going to have a temperature sensor inside, and it's going to be connected with its logic to whatever logic it has. And if the temperature, the thermometer shows that the temperature of the equipment inside is too high, then the warranty is voided, or void. Okay. Now, so that's what I said about the barbecues. So you know that. I wonder if this cable is making noise here or not. Okay. Now, consider structured cabling. Now, another thing to look at things like that, and this is a very common concept. You see all those wire trays, but do we see any wires here? Um, you don't see any wires. Okay, let's. There's something in the chat line. I would suck to be the one who had to install and terminate all the cables. Actually, that that would be good because that's how you make money. And that thing is not being installed in one day. Let me tell you that. Just running the wires could take months. Then terminating the wires could take months. And then before the whole project starts to the end, it could be 6 months to a year, right? Depending on the um, yeah, take your time. Mm, careful with that one, right? Because if you take your time, you're going to make it obvious. Somebody's going to see it. They will not hire you again. And plus, if you do it too slow, or your quality of your work is not as good as the others, there would be five other IT companies or communications companies that will want to take your next job. Um, you want to do a job in a way that somebody is going to call you back for their next job. Okay, take your time. Yeah, all right. Uh, okay, so consider the structure. Okay, so where is the wiring go? Where's all the wire? Because that's a lot of wires here, and we don't see the wires. Where are they? Any idea? Anybody has any idea? There could be some rooms at the back, and there could. I mean, there's more room at the back, of course, and there could be more wire trays. So yes, but a lot of the wires actually run in the floors, and it's a very common. Um, They're in the bars going down the side. Yes, that too. But there's what they have to go somewhere, right? Uh, so you could see some of those. See those green wires there? So those are going somewhere as well. But a lot of the wires go in the floor, and it's a very common concept in larger facilities, and it's something that's called. Look at the floor. Okay, something that's called a raised floor, and that's what it looks like. Okay, so if you see that picture here, a lot of wires go in the floor, and that's what it looks when wiring is done in the raised floor. Very common concept. Years ago, I did a project. I think, yeah, it was in Windsor, but that was, oh wow, that was like 15 years ago. It was a huge facility. It involved, I think, 800 connections, uh, copper, and 800 connections fiber. So every desktop would have a faceplate, and because of the modular plugs that we're using on that, there are ports. You can plug in the copper, you can plug in fiber, you can plug in a coaxial cable module or whatever telephone. So every that facility involved about 800 copper wires and 800 fiber wires. Now that job took a long time. So you know if you're working for communication company like that, sometimes you might expect to be sent out of town for 2 weeks. They put you in a hotel, and um, you just go wake up and go to work in the morning, and you're dragging your feet, tired, coming back into a hotel room, Do you want to party because you are out somewhere in a hotel? You're not going to party because you just, all the only thing that you will want is to get enough sleep so you can just work. So some of the job is not as it's not as easy as sitting at the desk. Although sitting at the desk also can be hard work. But this is the type of work, right, that's involved. Okay, so here's the raised floor. That is not cheap. It's actually quite expensive to install that floor. However, it's practical. So in that facility in Windsor, that raised floor was used. That's what I'm trying to get at. A very, very convenient way of running wires because you don't create a mess. Everything is under the floor, and it's not buried in the walls. Okay, it's not buried in the drywall ceiling. It's not buried in the drywall walls or whatnot. You always have access to troubleshoot, or if you need to run additional wiring, uh, it's easy to do so because of that concept. Okay, now just a little side note on that one is how do you pull those tiles, because those tiles are quite rigid. You should be able to walk on those and not collapse the floor. So those tiles are quite solid, and they're not very easy to pick up because what are you going to use? Put your fingernails between those seams there and try to pop one up? We're using those suction cups. So whenever you are going to you go to service call or something like that to do with the raised floor, you're going to ask the people who work there where they start, because they will have those suction caps, and that's how you move the floor, the floor tiles. When a wide area network, which is why is the floor raised so it's high for the wire wouldn't just need a few inches? Um, when it comes to wiring, you need the space. Okay. Now some of the floors are lower than others, but that will be a standard thing about 1 foot at least. And you want to have that space for the comfort of running the wires. Once you get to running those, you're going to see some of them when they're tight spaces. Somebody says, "Okay, we're going to save space. How much room do you need to run few wires?" Well, sometimes when you have to install 100 wires or 200 wires or 600 wires, all of a sudden that little tiny space is not enough because it's a lot of copper you're pulling through those areas there, right? It adds up, right? All right, let's talk about WAN, wide area network. WAN joins an unlimited number of smaller networks in a way that the devices of different networks can communicate with each other. An example, based on what we just said, and based on the very first slide, or maybe the second slide, very second slide that we had, what would be an example of wide area network? Anybody? Anybody? Come on. Da, 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 da. World Wide Web. There you go. It is the internet. Okay, that's a WAN. So when you have a um, port at a switch or a router, then the port says when, and what do I mean by a port? I mean a jack. Okay, it just looks like a RJ45 Ethernet jack, and it's labeled when. That's where you take a patch cable and you connect it to the modem. Okay, all right. Oh, look at that. Here's another picture that actually says that. Excuse me. I don't know if you can see that because when we're doing the Zoom sessions, the more people log in, the more blurry the picture gets. I noticed that when I do the lab demonstrations and I use OBS Studio for that one, the picture is razor blade sharp. Now, when we do Zoom sessions, so you might not see those things. So I'm gonna tell you what it is. Okay, here's the power port. Okay, here, bigger letters. Power port, reset port. Well, you press the reset to reset the whole equipment here. Now, here are the ports. This one says LAN/1 or LAN1/WAN port. Okay, then it's my mouse is running away. Okay, so it's LAN 2, LAN 3, and LAN 4. So it has pretty much four Ethernet jacks here, four LAN ports. If um, if you are using another modem, because sometimes the equipment that comes to, especially the residential, but it commercial as well, it's not just one thing. It's not just a modem. So this box here, it looks like it's also can be used as a modem, or it could be configured to use as a router or a switch. Okay, so LAN slash WAN, if you use DSL, which is digital subscriber line. So it's your DSL port. That's DSL goes through the phone line through POTS, okay, plain old telephone service, and the DSL signal is imposed onto that line, and it's plugged into here. So then all these four ports can be configured as LANs. What can you plug into these? You can plug in a computer directly, or you can plug in another switch or a hub that has another 8 or 4 ports, and one of them you plug into here, and from here it's like a splitter switch or a hub. Then you can connect 4 different devices. So it doesn't mean that you can only connect 4 devices, 4 computers or 3 computers plus um, um, telephone box, ATI adapter, but they call it a telephone box for the residential purpose. So that's basically what it is. Oh, now here's a WAN. So if you are not using DSL, let's say you have a fiber optic connection, and you have a modem that basically translates the signal from the fiber lines into electronics, then you would use the patch cord to plug into one of the ports of that. Okay, and then you have 3 LAN ports. So that's basically how this thing works. Just another example. Wireless local area network. Okay, as the word wireless suggests, this type of LAN. This is a type of LAN that uses wireless network protocols to establish communication between devices. Now, is it possible to have 100% complete wireless network? Almost, right? Because still, you need a wire to connect to your modem, and then your modem also has a wireless thing. So all your other devices at your home could be wireless, right? So your laptop, your cell phone, your whatever else could be connected to your internet wirelessly. So it's arbitrary. It could be yes or no, or yes and no at the same time. Um, does Ethernet hub affect the speed of the connection? Here's a question. The connection to the whole internet, it might, because you are going to share the bandwidth. The more devices you plug in, you're sharing the bandwidth with other devices. So if you're streaming some sort of like a TV show, then that TV show could take some part of bandwidth. So if you're using a computer to do an online learning or lesson, uh, you might have trouble with depending on what type of connection you have. Okay, with DSL, definitely you might have some troubles the more devices you connect. So the switch or a hub, yes, the more devices you plug in, you're sharing the speed between the devices. So it can affect. If you just have one switch and you plug in one device, then of course the speed, it could be a slight delay, but we'll just say that the speed might get a little bit slower because it has to go through the electronics, but that is insignificant. So you could basically say, no, it doesn't affect the speed. Right? But the more devices you plug in, yes, you're going to share the speed between the devices. Okay? So, or WAN can be a part of, okay, so you can have mostly wireless setup at home, or you could have wired network, and one of the ports, instead of plugged in from the modem or a switch or a router, instead of being plugged into another switch or a computer, it could be plugged into a wireless access point. And then you can take it outside and you can have nice and clean access to your internet from your backyard. If you want to use internet on your backyard, okay. Or let's say we're going to let's see what it looks like here. There it is. That's more or less that's what it looks like, and you can see a lot of those around our college. Those they look similar to that. These are the wireless access points, and that's where you connect to the internet or to the school network with your cell phones and your laptops. Okay. Now, the ones that we have, you can notice they have different lights. Most of them, when you walk by them, you're going to see a somewhere here. You're going to see like a blue light on this particular ones that we have. They're from Cisco as well. That blue light indicates that that there's something using it, which means it could be your cell phone that's actually locked onto that. Okay, or it could be your laptop, or it could be somebody else. Somebody logged onto that one. That device is in use, so we have a blue light. Now, when this thing is just sitting idling, when nobody walks by at night or in the evening hours or whatever, you're going to see a green light. That means nobody is using that particular access point at this moment. But sometimes you walk into a classroom and you can see one that has a green light, but after about 30 or 40 seconds, you're going to see that light changing to blue, which means a lot of yours or somebody else's cell phone locked onto it. Okay. Or if you see a flashing light, mostly green, then it's either there's an error or a problem with that, or it's booting up. Yeah. All right. So can you spot? Oh, I said presently in 2019. It's because I did this presentation in 2019. So it's presently 2021. WAPS at Venture College. The story I just showed you the status slides here. Okay. Now here's a wireless in the conferencing rooms also for the convenience that those things are being used, and most of the restaurants and pubs and public access facilities like malls or whatnot, they or fast food places like Tim Hortons or Burger King or McDonald's or KFC or whatever, they do also have the wireless access points, so people can use Wi-Fi. Because one of them got it, then everybody else wants that too, because they want the clients there now. Right? Does an internet have? Okay, so we still have you answered that question here. Okay, now let's keep going. Metropolitan area network. A network spanning a physical area. All right. There's a definition of what a span is. Basically, it's a coverage. Okay. Excuse me. Larger than LAN, but smaller than WAN. Of course, LAN is basically limited to a business facility or residential um, uh, building, but MAN is going to cover the whole city because it's a metropolitan area network. But of course, it's going to be smaller than WAN because there's nothing bigger than WAN. So larger than land, but smaller than land, when, such as a city. Okay, a man is typically owned and operated by a single entity, such as a government body or a large corporation. Okay, and these are references. I have to include references if I have any, if I got any of the information from the internet or pictures from the internet. I have to provide references. So here are the references. Okay. Now, traffic lights, for example, are connected. You will see things like that in a different form. Um, you see something like a rectangular white box, but it's made a little bit different because it has to be outside, uh, close to the traffic light installations. That's basically wireless access point that the traffic lights are communicating with the MAN, which is the Metropolitan Area Network. Okay. Uh, let's keep going here. We just done that. Let's get that. We're almost done with this part. System area network. Okay. Now, linked performance computers. That's a mouthful. Yeah. With high-speed connections. All right. In a cluster configuration, also known as cluster area network. Here's an example. There could be office in Paris, it could be office in New York, and through the cloud, there will be a storage network set up as a server. So, um, well, we'll be on a smaller example. Let's say there's a school board, okay, and the school board would have a main network room wherever the school board office is. So they would have all the information that have to do with the accounting, with the personal files of the employees and whatnot. Okay, so they have a big server. Well, what happens if something happens? Let's say, what happens if something happens? Let's say lightning strikes, the whole building goes on fire or something. So all the data is being lost because that server containing all the information was there. So what larger corporations, what they do, let's say it's a school board, they would have the main building for the main school board, but they will also have schools, high schools, elementary schools, and whatnot. They would set up servers in some high schools in the server room that would also be the basically that would copy all the information that is there. That's the vital, important information, such as finances, all the logistics, employees' information, and whatnot. So if something happens there, you would still have a copy of that somewhere else that you could rely on. So if something happens to this building, maybe something happens to that building, maybe there is another one that copies all the information there. So they would have that just to secure, just for security purposes. If something happens to one server, you can still retract the data from the other. So storage area network. Okay? Yeah, exactly. Backup. Okay. Yeah, backup, but not only. So this was just one example of using that. Now, SAN storage system area network, storage area networks. Here's another example of how it can be used. Um, but before that, we're just going to go over some characteristics of that. Okay, so system area network or storage area network, direct accessibility to servers. Okay, so servers can access that. Now, indirect or conditional accessibility to the end clients. That's where it comes to some people might be allowed to access that information, and some people might not be allowed. Like, for example, people who work for accounting, they would need access to the finances information or the finance information. But somebody who's electrician or anybody else, a cafeteria worker, they they don't have access to that. Okay, somebody else who does that, or a teacher, or somebody else. Okay, now that's the indirect or conditional accessibility to end clients. End client may access and subject to conditions. So that's basically the second and third lines mean the same thing. Okay, example. All right, local television service provider. Ever heard the concept like movie on demand or something like that? Well, uh, it could be used as that. All right. Now, here is a very popular series. You're going to see the picture of a famous guy here wearing a yellow hard hat. Now, let's say you want to order a movie on demand. Okay. Um, so it's a spin-off from 7 Years in Tibet, but this one says 35 years in in Ontario. Yeah, okay. All right. So what happens there? Okay. Example of a signal path. Here is a happy family gathered around their television set. Yeah, yeah. It looks like somebody's reading. There you go. So here's a happy family sitting around the television set, their favorite leisure time together as a family. Okay. Now, that television set is connected to something that's called a TV box for the easy of the term, just to make the terminology easier, everything is a box. Okay, so this one is called TV box, but basically it's a small version of a router or a server, mini server, I would say. So then that TV is connected to that. It's a media converter, okay, or media player that converts the signal that goes into the cloud into a signal that is understood by the television set. Now, that thing is connected to a modem, and the modem is connected to a cloud. Cloud is basically WAN, internet. Okay, so that's the signal path. What's happening on the other side? Here's the cloud, and from the cloud, this signal gets into the signal routing system at the local TV service provider, and it goes to something that's called, most often it will be called a media retrieval rack. So that's what it looks like from the back, and this is what it looks like from the front. Okay, and that's a magnification of what is in there. So it's just like a little magnification of what you see in that media retrieval rack. Basically, it's just a bunch of hard drives with the information stored. So all the movies are stored on all those hard drives. And if you request one of the movies, then that network is going to find that movie somewhere on that hard drive and it's going to play it back to you. So that's how storage area network can also work. Virtual private network. Okay, you know what? Let's just stop for a second here. Give us about 7 minutes. Okay, so let's say what's on the phones because that's our reference time reference. It's 1:18. Um, let's just take a quick break to absorb the information that we're having here and meet here at 25 after 1. Okay, I'm just going to leave the screen on, take a break, absorb, go make yourself fresh coffee, and we're going to continue until 2 o'clock. Okay. Okay. Excuse me. Do we have sound? Can we hear? Can you hear me? Okay, good. All right. All right. Let's keep going with this. VPN, Virtual Private Network. It's a very popular idea right now, and I'll show you how. Okay. VPN network. It's a secure tunnel between two or more devices. Well, don't know much yet. Okay. VPNs are used to protect, excuse me, to protect private web traffic from snooping, interference, and censorship or whatnot. Large corporations use VPN technology to link facilities located in different geographical locations. Example of a VPN. Um, Over here, we have somewhere that is, it says you're here. What could it be? It could be a money machine. It could be a cash register that's connected to the whole network in the whole store. And on the other side, you have the main network of this whole system. Okay. Now, this thing here can be in London, Ontario, where we are now. That can be somewhere in Chicago, or somewhere in China, or somewhere in India, or somewhere in France. Okay. Now, how would be possible to connect all those networks? You can run a long wire and have a dedicated line, under the ocean or whatnot, but that would be very expensive. But what we have established some connection, which is World Wide Web, so we could use internet to connect those. But we can't just have this thing in the open in the internet. We can't have that, like if it's a money machine that is connected to some main facility here, to a bank, we cannot have an open access to that. So part of the internet is purchased, so it's a secure access. It's just like having a invisible pipe. So nobody can get in it, nothing gets out, nothing gets through that. So basically, it's a private bandwidth designated to that corporation. A lot of corporations have that. Okay. Now, here's another visual example of the same thing here. So what do we have here? We have a branch office of whatever the company is. And here's a VPN router. uh, And over here is the VPN connection, or quote unquote tunnel, secure tunnel that is basically utilizing internet to convey its signal back and forth. And there's another VPN router that connects that to a corporate hub. All right. So now this corporate hub can have multiple VPN connection because it's in the cloud. So it could be different branches of whatever the corporation or company is connecting into that VPN, and it's designated just for that corporation here. Okay. Now let's see. Here's the map of the world, and let's say there is a company that has branches all over the world. Okay. Now they have a next slide. No, okay, so that's this slide here. So let's say one of the main, let's say we're in Canada, so let's say this is the main company building here. Excuse me. And through VPN, all these other branches that are everywhere else in the world can work sort of like a same LAN, like local area. So it's expanding the local area network to the whole world. So you could have a server here, a server here, and a server here, and they all could be connected through VPN. So all the information is being processed right into that main central location. Like for example, a Walmart. Okay, all the cash registers in Walmart, all the managers' computers, they are connected to VPN. And if the network goes down, you can't buy a chewing gum in that cash register because there is no connection. And so all the transactions. So somebody buys can of coffee and a sweater in Walmart, okay, or loblaws or something like that, then as soon as that transaction goes through, the debit transaction goes through VPN, it is already registered in the main branch facility. So it's like a one huge LAN, but it's not really because it's not local area network. It's just so company or branches or facilities in different parts of the world can function just like LAN. Okay. Now, the benefits of that is you're saving a lot of money on the because if you wanted to if you didn't have the VPN, you would have to convey that information in some other way. So it would be not as efficient because it would be time delayed. Or if you wanted to utilize telephone lines, you would have to pay long distance charges for the telephone lines, and of course the whole thing would be slower. Okay, so that's one of the uses of VPN. We're going to touch on VPN again when we talk about the VoIP telephone systems. Okay, think about that. But we're going to cover that in another lecture. Okay. Can we exist without internet? And there is a little bit clip of a very famous cartoon. Once you download this, click on that, and you can have a kind of a break for your brain just to see something funny. Okay, now I I would encourage you to watch some of that. Some of this thing you already done in you have already done um, in our labs. So you can watch that link here just to kind of have a refresher on how to connect those and how to communicate terminate. So we're going to do on those labs. So it's just one more way you can see. Now I'm not sure whether I put this thing. I put references to other YouTube connections that demonstrate how to connect those jacks, or is it already to some of my demo? Now these are the short ones, so it's probably somewhere else. But we also have, you can watch my lab demonstrations. It's going to give you the same thing. And here are references. Okay, now I'm going to queue up another lesson, and we're going to stop when we stop. Hopefully we're going to be able to finish both lessons today. Okay, so that was the network types. Okay, now we're going to cover something that's called network topology. Any questions so far as far as what we have covered? I know it was a lot, and it is, as all my lectures are going to be posted on YouTube and included in our playlist, which is posted in the announcements. So you can go back and watch some of that stuff if you're bored, okay, or if you want to fall asleep. Either way, I think it's pretty interesting, and you can actually make money doing this. All right, knowing how to do this. All right, let's go. Network topology. All right, there are different types of network topologies. Topology. What is topology? We're going to cover that. All right, so ring, mesh, star, fully connected tree, or a bus, or inline or chain topology. And today we're going to cover these four: ring, star, ring or star, ring or star, inline or a bus. Okay. So let's just definitions. The PowerPoint has just didn't have enough space. Okay, definitions. That's supposed to be one word. Okay, network topology. The arrangement, what is a network topology? It's an arrangement of a network, including its nodes and connecting lines. We're going to talk about what nodes are. Um, that's it. It's an arrangement of a network, including, it's an arrangement of a network. Let me put the accent on the specific words. It's an arrangement of a network, including its nodes and connecting lines. Two ways of defining network geometry. One is the physical topology, how things are connected physically, and the other one is logical or signal topology. Is basically how the signal actually travels between the devices. Right? Now, this would be basic elements of a network presentation. So hosts or nodes, okay? And on the other side, we have connecting links. So hosts would be something like computers, wireless access points, routers, switches, hubs, bridges, gateways, or whatever is intelligent and connects to Ethernet. Okay, printers or other devices such as maybe IP cameras. Okay, surveillance cameras as well. All right, now connecting links. How do we connect all the devices to each other? We can connect it through copper, fiber, or air. So copper is the ones that cables that we're playing with during our labs. It will be in our labs we're using Cat 5e, but it could be Cat 6, Cat 6a, Cat 7, and whatnot. It could be also coaxial cable. All right. Now fiber optics and air. Air would be using electromagnetic waves to connect. So wireless access point actually uses air link to connect between it and your cell phone. So there'll be air link. Right? Mostly, basically, these are just three types: copper, fiber, or air. That will be the typical links that connect the devices. All right. Now let's talk about ring topology. This will be a symbol for the ring topology. Now in ring topology, each node host connects to two adjacent nodes in a continuous pathway for signals through each node. Okay. Data travels from node to node with each node along the way handling every data packet. Every node acts as a repeater. So, for example, if every node would have its own distinct address, so let's say this node or this computer wants to communicate with this computer, right? Then it would send the information with the destination address, okay? And so he would basically say, "Here's a message for number 705." Just take a number of the out of uh, so so it would send the information to this one here. He says, there's a message for 705. Are you 705? Oh, he's not. I'm not. I'm going to repeat the message, pass it along. Here's a message for 705. I am not. I'm going to repeat, pass it along. Same here. Oh, I'm 705. The message is for me. So I'm going to receive that data packet and do whatever I have to do with it. Okay. So that's basically how the ring configuration works. Right? Ring topology hardware intercept could you intercept someone else's data? Okay. Well, when it comes to wiring, wiring is more secure than wireless. Good question. All right. Because, like for example, when there will be instances that I was installing networks for different corporations, mostly in the GTA, like Toronto area. There will be some business high rise. So there would be one office that would deal with some low security data, and that office that would occupy the whole floor of the building or a half a floor of the building, they would have wired connections and they would have wireless access points. Right? Now, there would be another floor, two floors above, or three floors above, or whatever, a different floor of the building. It would be, let's say, financial institutions such as bank, and that would be not a bank type of that you would go and talk to the person who is behind the counter to do a financial transaction. It would be people who would have to do with the management or office type of work that has to do with that bank. Usually, when that happens, they would be not allowed any wireless devices would not be allowed in that one. They will also always want to have a wired connection, just Cat 5e or Cat 6, mostly, right? Between the server and the desktop destinations. Right. So wired network is way more secure than the wireless because in order to tap into the wire, you have to actually find that wire. And if the building is locked and there's security there, and the wires run certain way that they're hard to access, then it's going to be very difficult to access the data, to intercept the data, to basically spy on that business or facility or whatever. All right. To answer your question, could you intercept? Yes, you could intercept. There is always a way. There is always a technology to intercept something. Now, it's probably a lot more hard to get some sort of a, quote unquote hacking kind of a thing. But it is also always possible. Whatever I work with, whatever I have on my computers or my cell phone or what else, I always assume that there could be someone that could hack into my device. All right. So just keep that in mind. But it's much harder to tap into the wired connection than to wireless. It is close to impossible, but then again, never say never. Everything is always possible. So, ring topology hardware, single port NIC or a double port, two port NIC. NIC stands for network interface card. Now, these are the bigger network interface cards. Of course, if there is a NIC that is built into a laptop, they will be much smaller, or there could be a NIC that is built into your cell phone. It is going to be also much smaller. But this will be the examples that would use the desktop computers. Okay, so single port NIC and two port NIC. So for the ring topology, uh, most most probably you would have uh, uh, double port NIC, because in order to connect devices in a circle like that, you will have something coming in and something going out, right? Now, so that would be the most common configuration for the ring topology. However, towards the end of this lesson, I'm going to show you how it could actually be also done if it was using um, mm, just a single port NICs. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that this would be the network card that would be used for the ring topology. Yeah. All right, considering physical topology. So, okay, so here's the question: considering physical topology, which NIC would be used in a ring network, single or two port? So, of course, the answer for that, hint, hint, it would be a double port. That would be the most common configuration. 99%, 99.9% of networks using ring topology would have one input and one output. You could use that, sure. You could use single port, but you would have to be really stubborn to do it. Okay, so let's just say this no and this yes. Okay, double port. Ring configuration, this is how data travels through a ring configuration. Excuse me, ring. What's happening with this display here? Ring and a token ring. So that G should be here. Okay, ring. Right? It's just the way this thing displays here. Ring and a token ring. In a ring configuration, data travels one way only. So um, if you interrupt the link, if the node is towards in a signal pattern, if you interrupt that, then the data would not be travel, would not be able to travel through the, obviously, okay, because it only travels one way. In a token ring, if the data is sent one way and there's an interruption, then it will be noticed. Then the device would say, "Oh, there's something wrong in there." So I'm going to try to send the data the other way. See if I can get the data to the same device, but using the other way. Okay. Examples using a ring topology would be when or a man. Okay, so here's will be man, which metropolitan area network. There would be different buildings, apartment buildings or whatnot. That could be using some server rooms that for whatever the purpose the network has to work in certain way. it would be a ring topology here, and some of the devices could be connected through air, or some of the electromagnetic waves, radio waves, or some of the connections can be made through underneath with using fiber. Okay, so that would be example of using a ring topology, or token ring. Okay, now another way of using a ring topology, if you have a switch in a rack, let's say you have one single switch that is able to connect 24 ports. So if you have less than 24 devices, you can use one switch. But if you have a bigger facility that uses more than this one switch is capable of connecting, then you would cascade the switches in a way that this cascade of switches, the group of switches, uh, pretty much is going to behave like one big switch, and of course mm, the all the wires would run in something that's called a star topology, which is the next one we're going to look at. So it's on every wire home runs. It's a direct connection to every device. It's called star topology, but the switches quite often would be configured in a ring topology. So here's one link, it goes to the last one, and here and here and here. So that's a ring topology. So those switches can communicate with each other, and in this way, they can act as one huge, bigger switch. Okay? Suggested links. Well, okay, I'm going to ask you to watch these links once you download the posted lecture notes. I want you to know what the difference is between hub and a switch and a router. It's a pretty good explanation that somebody did. I also want you to know this. I want you to watch this link here. So this is how to set up a chain or ring topologies with what we just did. So this is just a picture on the PowerPoint, and over here it's shown a little kind of more detail of how it looks like in the real world. um, Quite often we're not going to be asked as network technicians or infrastructure or cable technicians. We're not going to be asked to set up those switches. However, we're going to be asked to connect those, so somebody else can access that remotely, and they can do the setup. And sometimes you're going to have to work with your own laptop, because whoever is doing the network support, the IT version of the network or the support, excuse me, or a setup, uh, they're going to sometimes ask you to connect your laptop to that particular switch. So you should know what those things look like, at least. Okay. And then MAC addresses explained. Okay. So these three, if you watch those, then again, you can ask some questions next time we meet each other. Um, but you need to be familiar with not exactly how to set this up, because there's a whole different kind of science, different animal of how to set things up. It will be the IT technology, but you should know the basic terminology. So if somebody asks you to connect something to a router, or if somebody asks you to connect something to a modem, your laptop to a modem, you should be able to find the ports. You should be able to know what it looks like. You should know what these things look like. You should know what these ports are for. If you get, because a lot of wiring data technicians, not only you run wires and terminate the wires, but quite often you're going to have to do some sort of like a supported setup, which sometimes when the IT support can log into that, they can do their own setup, so that's fine. But sometimes they're not able to, and it's going to require you to log in with your laptop, and they're going to tell you what to press. Or sometimes they're going to connect. You can connect your laptop to that device and your laptop to the internet, and there could be some communication software like a team viewer or something like that, so that technician can access your computer and use your computer to set this up. So you need to know at least what things look like. Okay. Okay, next thing was star topology. Okay, in star topology, each node of a network is attached to a center node. Okay, So here is the server, and here are the peripherals. Looks like a star if you symbolize it. Okay. The central node is usually a hub or a switch. Most switch would be most. If you watch those that link from the previous page, you're going to see the difference between hub and a switch. Then the general node can also be another proprietary device such as NVR, network video recorder. So it doesn't always have to be a switch. There will be different devices that we're connecting. So if you're connecting a security camera system, then the main node, everything runs to it, would be a NVR, which is called network video recorder. Okay? Sometimes the network video recorder is connected with one link to a switch, and all the cameras go into a switch, and then you assign the IP addresses to be recognized by the NVR. Okay, so sometimes you go direct connection, and sometimes you go switch, and then you get a link from the switch into the NVR. Star topology is the most common physical wiring configuration considering the horizontal network wiring. And if you don't know what horizontal network wiring is, just keep watching this presentation. All right, star topology concept diagram. That's how you can also visualize it. Let's say this is a switch, and this would be the nodes, and every node or device is directly connected into the switch, has designated port. Right? Star topology, LAN, local area network, that's what it would look like. So there would be patch panels, and a patch panel is a bunch of jacks stuck together in a frame. And when we do the labs connecting a Cat5e to a jack, each jack from the front would have the corresponding terminals at the back of this patch panel. So that's basically, there is not a big philosophy, just for the convenience purposes and for the aesthetics and for the for the easiness of installation, or to make the installation possible. The jacks are stuck together and framed, and that's how you make patch panel. Okay. Now that's basically what it looks like from the rear. From the front, it would look like this. You would have patch panel ports, and those patch panels would use patch cables, which would be a RJ45 plug on one side and on the other's end as well. And most of the time would be straight links, but sometimes crossover links are required, and they would be from the front of the patch panel be connected to whatever equipment they need to be connected. Okay. Now, star topology. Can you identify the star configuration? Okay, so over here we have a horizontal run. Remember, it's the horizontal area here. Here's an IDF. Um, excuse me. So there will be the MDF. There will be main cross connect or the main distribution frame, and from there it would go to a riser. So this would be the vertical run, or sometimes called the backbone. Okay? And over here, everything that is connected to this IDF, an intermediate distribution frame, it will be considered as a horizontal wiring. Okay, of course they don't go horizontal all the time. They go up in the ceiling and then down the wall, and so yeah. But they're connected to that one. Now, if there is one computer that would be, let's say the last one, for example, it will be connected to that, and there would be a hole in the wall, and that would be over here. It would be considered as a horizontal system for this particular IDF. Okay, but so with horizontal in the horizontal runs, all the devices connect in a star topology, or it could be a ring as well. But most of the time, it's going to be a star topology. They connect to the one closet. Okay, sometimes it's called closet always. Okay, also. So this would be a riser. You see the idea of a riser? There would be a floor in a high rise or a big building that has many floors. And then for the convenience of wiring, quite often you would see a riser. So the communication closets would be on top of each other, just so you could run the backbone wiring as well. Okay. All right, structured network cabling. Most popular physical topology is the star topology. Now we got 5 minutes left. We might go a couple minutes over the time. So if you have to go to another class or do whatever else, by all means go. I'm going to post this thing on YouTube, so you can watch the later on. You can watch the final few minutes of this. Right now, structured network cabling. It's a most popular physical topology is the star topology. Okay? Simply because that's how things are being wired. You home run the wires from the desktop location into the rack location, and then you connect them all in one place, and then you tap them or cross connect them into the or patch them into the whatever the equipment is, and it spiders out into the um, desktop locations. And if you want to symbolize that, it would look like a star, like the symbol that we just looked at. Okay. Now, again, this is a slide that we saw before. So that's basically what I just explained to you. Now, bus topology. Okay, but in a bus topology, all devices connect to a single cable or line. The most popular way for me to visualize a bus topology would be a radio station and a bunch of radio receivers. There is a radio station antenna that transmits the signal over the air. So there is no direct connection between the radio receivers. All the radio receivers tap in to the same area, same air space that the signal has a strength to reach. So there is no direct connection with two wires or whatever wires. It's sort of like the closest thing to visualize the bus. Now, that same concept can be utilized with the wires. So you could have a hardwired link. Okay, so whatever the signal is coming in here, okay, and you could tap into the wire the wire here, and you could have some device. You could tap in here also, and you could have another device, and so on. You can just keep going with the devices. Now, the type of the connection is obviously is going to be a little bit different than the hardwired connection for star topology. Maybe different frequencies can be used. A bunch of frequencies can be transmitted into that one line. A bunch of carrier frequencies. A carrier frequencies is a frequency that contains the information, and the receiver will be tuning into that carrier frequency. So you could have a bunch of transmitters with different carrier frequencies connected in here, right? Different transmitters. And this pair of cables would combine, would embed all those frequencies together, and the devices would be able to tune into the particular frequency just pick one frequency that's being transmitted and just get the data. Same as the radio, you have an antenna here, antenna tower that transmits the radio frequencies, and along the way, the radio receivers can tune in. But this antenna here can be servicing different types of radio stations. Okay, and it could be transmitting different radio stations at once, or it could be different antennas, but the air would combine different frequencies as well, and the receivers would tune into the particular one. So that's basically the concept of bus topology. Air could be used for that, but uh, when it comes to networking, it's mostly used for the type of wiring. Okay? And yes, in this case, you can intercept the signal quite easily, but if the signal is encoded in a certain way, then you would just see that there's a signal. All right, now, uh, in the old days, old days, a few years ago, you're talking about 25 years ago, 20 years ago, The networks would be wired with the coaxial cable, which we're going to study as well, and the devices. So there would be one server location somewhere, and the devices would and tap in to the main bus line, and they would get their own signal. Okay, so that was the previous way. Now, pretty much everything is done in a star topology, but still, some of the examples are. Um, I'm going to give you a couple examples that still bus topology is still used, uh, connecting various types of devices. Bus topology was used in the LAN settings in the early 1990s. Presently, 2019, it should be 2021. I should check those slides. Presently, all LAN horizontal systems use the star configuration. Now, bus topology, although bus topology is not used in LAN settings anymore for the most part, it is still implemented in certain systems. Let's say this is a fire alarm zone, okay? Because fire alarm or security alarms, they would have the main board, okay? And this would be this whole circuitry over here. But they would have zones. So here's one zone, here's another zone, here's another zone, and so on. And those peripherals, those ports, are called zones. So in one zone, you can have one bus line, and you can connect different devices to it. And if one of those is triggers that, then that zone is going to be triggered. So for example, this zone number one, for example, it could be loop or wire that is servicing smoke detectors in one of the hallways. Okay, so there's a hallway that is 50 feet long, and you would have smoke detectors in the ceiling. So you would just run one bus line, and all the smoke detectors will be connected to that one. So that's called a zone. Now, this one here uh, could be having another devices such as maybe pull stations that are the pull station, the one that you by the door that you pull to indicate that there's a fire. There could be a pull station in the same hallway. So when the fire alarm acts, you just recognize, okay, there's a zone here, so there's a smoke in the hallway so and so, or a pull station was activated in hallway so and so, or there could be a zone that has a couple of heat detectors in the boiler room. Okay, the fire starts there, or there could be another zone that is having a smoke detectors in some ducts, air ducts. Okay, so that would be a zone. Okay, so this would be a bus configuration, sort of like a primitive way of explaining that. And in the fire alarm, the all the devices are open, normally open, and there will be something that's called a end of line resistor. So the zone is going to look for that end of line resistor, and if it sees that resistor, then it thinks that everything is okay. Now, if one of the devices triggers, it's going to short that. So it's not going to see the zone, it's not going to see the resistance of the end of line resistor, it's going to see a dead short. That means something has triggered. Okay. Now, if you break the line at some point, then the zone is going to see not going to see the end of line resistor, but it's also not going to see a dead short because it's going to be open, and it's not going to trigger as a fire alarm, but it's going to trigger as a trouble on the line. So that's when you see trouble buzzing. It's a very annoying buzz, and that very annoying buzz, its purpose is to annoy the people who are in the building, so they pick up the phone and they call the service company to service the fire alarm system because um, something is wrong with it, so it's not maybe not working properly. Okay, so that would be a example of using a bus line. Another example would be in security alarms. So you see, security alarms also have zones. They work a little bit different. uh, Now, for example, that's not a little bit not as primitive as this fire alarm passive device, pretty much, or passive contacts, but some of those are not passive, the devices. But these will be intelligent devices, okay, active devices such as keypads, all right? So the keypads would have, uh, sorry, it just changed on me. Okay, so the keypads would have power supplied to it, and the power will be just in parallel, so that every keypad gets the power. But also in parallel, every keypad connects to the bus line. Okay, and the keypad is using whatever protocols they will be using, so they can communicate with the main board and establish its own channel. So it could be a frequency modulation. It could be different other ways of modulating the signal, so the keypad can talk individually to the main board, but it doesn't have to be hardwired separately. Okay, so that would be a bus configuration. Inline or chain topology. In this configuration, nodes are connected to each other through each other in a chain configuration. Each node acts as a repeater. And okay, excuse me, hold on. Sorry. Okay, so uh, here's the inline chain. As opposed to ring, this is an inline or chain topology. Now, sometimes you want to connect things into a ring because it's more efficient. And sometimes, especially in some industrial communication, so machines are connected with the PLC controls. So be a one machine that would have, and sometimes there's no server because the machines are talking to each other through a chain or inline topology. Okay, um, so that's another inline topology for the networks. Okay, now just examples from the um, real life. I want you to see some of the real examples. So, workstation and printer in this case. So, this would be a switch, this would be a workstation, and this would be a printer. So, this workstation and the printer are connected to the server or the switch, sorry, in a star topology. Okay. Sometimes you're going to see configuration that the printer is connected inline, and those the workstation and the printer are connected in the inline topology. See the difference here? Another practical example. You also, by looking at this, I'm giving you real life examples, presenting some real life equipment, okay, that you will be dealing with. So might as well learn that this equipment exists. So this Ethernet extender is connected inline with the Ethernet link. There's no other way that you would want to connect this piece of equipment with, you have to put that in line. The reason for using the Ethernet extenders is, remember when we talked about 300 feet is the longest pathway that the copper can handle, the Cat5e or Cat6 or Cat7, 300 feet, 328, but 300 is the set length. If it is longer, let's say if this distance from the switch to that workstation is 400 feet, then you cannot use straight copper link. And straight copper link, I don't mean a straight configuration as a straight or crossover. I mean a dedicated line uninterrupted. Okay? So, and if you only have copper wiring available, and sometimes it's impossible to substitute this with fiber or wireless, then you have to find something that would help you with that. And if you can interrupt that wire somewhere along the way, so the distance between here and here is less than 300 feet, and the distance between here and here is less than 300 feet, you snap on that Ethernet extender, and it's an active device which can be plugged into the wall or it could be using the power from the switch. It's called the power over Ethernet. So the switch would have a port that is able to supply not only the signal, but also power, DC power, that is going to power up this device. So it could do its electronic signaling and whatnot and pass the signal on. So of course the communication link is going to be slower, but it's going to be possible. And sometimes you don't need the speed, you just need the good connection. The example of that would be a cash register in some large department store. Like for example, this server or the switch could be in a server room somewhere in the main building, and this will be a garden center where there will be a lot of wiring going underground, and this distance could be longer. So if you can pull it out somewhere, make a junction box between the main building and the garden center, then you can use the Ethernet extender. Okay? So the cash register doesn't have to have high graphics or whatnot. It just transmits the data. Somebody's knocking. It just transmits the data. Okay, it just transmits the data of a business transaction was made. Somebody bought a chewing gum, or somebody bought a uh, um, uh, Coca-Cola or something. Okay. Um, hold on. There's a. I'm having a lesson here. Beware. Sit down, children. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so that would be the inline type of thing. Now, here, another inline topology example would be um, PoE injector. Okay, remember, some devices need power to operate, and sometimes it's possible to plug them in, but sometimes there's no outlet in the ceiling, but you still need to use a device. Okay, so if the switch is not able to provide the power, then because okay, some switches more expensive, you can order them in a way that the ports are able to provide the signal and the power to power devices that are connected to it, but some of them just provide the signal. Okay, not all switches are the same. Obviously, the ones that don't provide the power are less expensive. So if you have existing network uh, present, then you can connect one. Excuse me, hold on. So so if you just want to add up, because you have existing network here, okay, and then at some point somebody decided that, oh, maybe we should have wireless Wi-Fi in our business. Okay, so are we going to replace the whole switch for a more expensive one? And that goes with the installation, configuration, and the money just goes up, the bill just goes up. But if you don't want to replace the whole switch, you can just put Ethernet, no, sorry, power over Ethernet, PoE injector. So if the switch doesn't have PoE capability, now you can put that in the rack location, so you have somewhere to plug it in, because the rack would have power and power outlets, and then you plug in from the from the port into the input of that, and from the output of that plug into the device. So that would be also in the inline topology. Okay. All right. VoIP telephones, voice over internet protocol telephones, inline topology. Okay, sometimes what happens is that people switch from the regular telephone system to VoIP telephone systems to save money on the connections. And we talk about that when we cover the VoIP telephone systems. Most of the offices would have the Ethernet connection because they have computers. Okay, now VoIP uses network or Ethernet. Okay, so you would have to run additional wire, and that also goes with the money. Okay, now when you want to install with the minimum costs, because you want clients to buy things, so whoever designed the companies who designed the VoIP telephone systems came up with a clever idea. Why don't we put that thing in line with the computer? Okay, so this VoIP telephone system is installed in line with the workstation. Where can you see that? You can see that a lot with the large department stores. And I keep giving the Walmart or Home Depot. Home Depots are quite often. If you work for Home Depot, you're going to see that you're going to have a big VoIP telephone system, and that is going to be plugged into the Ethernet outlet. And from that the input of the phone, and from the output of the phone is going to be plugged into the cash register, which is basically a PC. All right. Now consider these. Okay, I'm gonna skip that. You're just going to, of course, identify the inline and the star topology because it's a mix. Okay. Now I'm gonna go to the last. All right. So okay, so this physically is wired as a star. Okay, can the system work as a ring? Well, it is wired as a star, but can it work as a ring? Okay, well, and if so, how? And okay, here's how. All right, let's just have the switch. Okay, here's a switch, and here is bunch of workstations, and they are hardwired in a star configuration. Okay? So physical topology is a star. Okay. Now, logical topology. Remember when we talked about different topologies? Could be it could be physical and logical or signal topology. Okay, it can be a star, or it could be. It's how the signal is being handled. It's how the signal is traveling between the workstations. It could be also a ring, depending on how the switch is configured. Okay, so. So even though that is also basically connected as a star, internal circuitry could be configured as such that it could pass the signal through as a ring. Now, it is not really a very popular way of doing it. And it's almost like a surreal example of the topology. I just want you to kind of visualize the difference between the physical and the logical topology or the signal topology. Okay? And this would visualize the physical would be a star topology, and the logical signal handling would be in a ring. Okay. All right, lab foundation, structured cabling, hardware. We already have done that. This is what we're going to cover in our labs. So this is a hardware. Here's a patch panel. That's what it looks like from the rear, and that's how it looks like from the front. And we already explained that this is basically just a bunch of jacks stuck together, and the terminals on the other side are just stuck together. So if you see it just as a whole thing, it could be confusing. But if you break into one by one, you're going to see the colors just as we did on labs. And some of us are going to do this 110 punch down tool connection this coming week. Okay. Here's what the jack looks like. It's a data jack, and here are cables. One is Cat5e and one is Cat6. What is the difference between Cat5e and Cat6? When you just strip it, and if there's no any print on the cable, right away you can tell that. I'm not sure if you can see it on this Zoom thing, but you will see when you download this PDF file that the Cat6 has additional physical separators. So the pairs are twisted in the Cat5e, and they're also twisted in the Cat6. There's slightly different type of twist. The twist in the Cat6 is much tighter than the Cat5e, but not only the pairs are twisted around themselves, but they also twisted around each other, and they're separated by a kind of like an X-like separator in that. So that's right away how you can tell difference between Cat6 and Cat5e. All right, insulation displacement connection, we already have covered that. I can't talk enough about that. Most of those connections that we're doing here are insulation displacement connections. And you can also see my other lab demonstrations that were explaining that. Okay, and that's just a repeat from the last. Okay, that's the end of the slideshow. We went 20 minutes over, but we had a late start because there was a bit of a confusion with the Zoom meetings. Okay. Any questions before we wrap up today's class? You can shoot the questions in the chat line, or you can send me an email if you have any, or you can ask me or other instructors during the lab times. And that's it for today's lesson. And I will see you when I see you in class or next time online. Thank you. Goodbye.